just sharing with them this information about slippage back, but I'm presupposing that they've already been successful. And so presupposition of success is given to the person and that they start to live this. So expectations of success. Optimistic outlook. You want to be sure the person has optimistic outlook about things. And getting better is looking better. So truly, if someone has got better, then you will notice this, because this person truly does look better. And that, I would say, that is one of the major factors, I would say, in the recovery process. And the other thing is a preference to feel first. You know, if the person's really recovering, then they're having a preference actually for how they're feeling. And they're deciding, you know, how they would like to feel. And then they might hear something or see something. But first they're totally having a preference for, well, how am I feeling inside actually? Okay. Let's go now to talk a little about the vestibular paper, and possibly there are some things in the vestibular paper. Let's use this session to really familiarise ourselves with the vestibular sense. And so, who would like to bring out something about the importance of the vestibular system, or who would like to move us into a discussion about the vestibular system? And is there something that's important that you understood about that? Like, for instance, how the thymus gland, which is regulating the concept of I in our immunity, you know, how that's affected. Or motion sickness, how motion sickness occurs. These are some of the things I think we should talk about. Mm-hmm. So, who would like to start? Ask a question or make a statement or something.
We were having a study group last week, and we were talking about motion and the way the vestibular system recognizes or senses motion. And one thing we talked about, or questioning each other about, is that if moving forward, we feel acceleration. And so we feel that pressure or whatever, the vestibular senses that. And then once we reach our top speed and maintain that speed, how is it we still are aware of movement?
Okay, we are not so. The only way we would be is actually if there's a little kind of actual change of pace. That's what we do notice. We notice change of pace. But when something becomes constant...
Another reference? Another step? Another reference?
Possibly, but however, the vestibular system will notice immediately any change of pace. But the vestibular system doesn't notice. If somebody starts to go into like a turn or something like that in the plane, right, and they are turning, it's possible once the turn is occurring, unless there's a change in the angle in relation to the earth, the horizontal, it's possible that people are not so noticing, in fact. But the minute that you would go into the turn, you know, the receptors in the head would indicate that you have gone into the turn, and that once you stay in that turn, you know, things start to just become relatively normal. Like if you reach a speed, if we get up to 300 miles an hour, and we're travelling at 300 miles an hour, and then we're steady at 300 miles an hour, you know, the vestibular is not registering anything. But then if we accelerate another 100 miles an hour to 400, in that process of acceleration, the receptors in the head would be feeling that thrust.
Is the vestibular system dependent on the visual?
The vestibular system is involving all of the senses. It's a sensory integrating organ. All of the senses feed into the vestibular system.
The reason I ask that is if you fly an airplane and you don't have particular instruments, you go into a cloud bank, you may not be aware of it, and you can end up flying upside down and not know it until you come out of the clouds and realize that you're upside down.
Yes.
The process itself takes place without your awareness.
Right, yes. Right.
So
That's a way to develop the sense would be, in a plane especially, sometimes you're even aware totally that the plane has moved a little like this, This is the vestibular sense that's indicating this inside.
when you're not aware, is that the lack of the visual input?
It can be, of course, lack of input, basically, or that the brain has become used to the input. It's like gazing into the gains field, what they call a gains field, gazing into a firmament of the sky, going to a place where there is no footing of anything, completely, eventually, the brain really is requiring stimulus to be there, to be alert.
Right, so if you go into this all-white background or whatever, it really puts you in an altered state. You may not even pay attention to the change.
Quite possibly. This is the main reason, of course, why there's instruments in the plane to sense this, banking and things like that, that become constant then.
I've got a good grasp on the idea of all those parts that you described in the paper, and the little hairs and the darkness, things that move that create the signals that let you know whether it's going spinning or accelerating, decelerating, and so forth. What I'm wondering about is the relationship between all that and whole brain function. That's the...
Okay, well, as the vestibular system neuroinhibits at the brainstem level, it's the major organ that's allowing, pathways to be innervated. It's the vestibular system that's sensing the equilibrium of the flow of information. If there's an overload, let's say, I see something that's really horrific, visual image just overloads the brainstem, the vestibular system knocks out that overloaded system, that sense, so that the brainstem is allowed to be continuing flowing. Sometimes there's this is so overloading the brainstem that it spills over into what they call the vagus nucleus, which is connecting the tummy, so the person kind of feels nauseous maybe or something like that. The vestibular system is setting up a corresponding equilibrium in the brain, which is very important for processing information. If I had a bottle of water and I went like that and I was spinning and the water was spinning round and round and round like that, now if I just touch something on the surface of the water, the information is going to be swept around continuously round this before, it won't be able to go directly straight down, so that the spinning has taken away a property, a semiconductive property, right? Now in the brainstem there's a reflex which occurs, which compensates, which goes the other way. So as much as like if you were out here spinning on the floor and then you stop, all of a sudden what you'd notice is that the room is spinning this way, spinning the other way actually in your head. And of course this is the energy still yet spinning right in the head, which is called circulavection. This is an example of a compensatory activity that the brain is always having to do and be involved with to create equilibrium. And when somebody's experience is without this, it can create a pattern where there's an energy flow quite incredibly going out, or there's an energy flow always going around in one direction. So that the person's unable to process information by using one part of the brain, but only certain aspects. So, for instance, I worked with a woman, she was in her 40s, and she'd had the most horrific life. It was amazing that she got this far in her life. And I said this to her, I said, you've done the most amazing job to get this far with the programs that you've had. Because that was true, I tell you. If she had been a man in New York, she probably would have been on the street. She wouldn't have made it. She had very few programs of energy coming in toward herself. What I noticed was she had great programs of energy going out. Intense amount of energy going out of her. With everything that she touched and everything she did and everything she talked about, there was an energy totally going out, and hardly any programs to do with an energy coming in.
There was no flow. There wasn't really a
Oh, no, she was grossly interrupted, grossly inhibited, intensely and grossly averse, and pain, a lot of pain in her life because...
Did she see this thing that was going out as a loss?
Oh, she always had felt lost. She was at loss, yes.
Losing.
Oh, yes, majorly she was like always feeling lost.
The going out wasn't done because she was wanting it. The going out was being done.
A program was set up in her life at an early age. When she was 5 years of age, she had quite a horrific experience that left her with a pattern in her brain where energy was travelling out quite remarkably, and this compensatory activity hadn't occurred. And so it left her with a program in the brain which continuously, right through her life, there was a great outpour of energy and very little coming back in. The reason why I knew this was because, I would say something to her and then she would say to me, "Don't you care?" And this immediately to me was a trigger, because I knew I was caring, and I knew that what I had said to her was about caring. It was very interesting to me that she was blind to me caring, and that was the first clue. I realised, oh my God, she's not aware of any energy coming in. And so then I asked her what caused her to get stuck, and I said, "Remember the first time you felt this way?" And she's like this, totally. And so then I said, "Well, what is it that you were seeing?" And she really had to be quite relaxed. And finally, when she was relaxed, all of a sudden she realised, here she is, 5 years of age, and she'd been taken to the hospital by her dad. And the nurse, the memory was of her being carried away from her dad in the hospital, right? She was looking over this nurse's shoulder, right, and being carried away from her dad, with her arms outstretched, right? And she didn't know this, but she was going to get her tonsils out. And no one had told her what was going to happen or anything like that. She didn't have any idea. All she knew was here she was in a situation where it seemed everything was out of control, and she was being carried away from her dad. You'd be amazed at the difficulty that she's given other professionals in New York, right? And eventually, like, some physicians called me up and they said, "My God, we're just like can't deal with her anymore." And she was one of this person's most difficult clients. And anyway, so then I said to her, "What happens now if you run the movie backward? Just before it finishes, you run the movie backward." So in other words, just before the whole thing was complete, her tonsils were out, she ran the movie backwards, and what she saw was herself being carried back toward her dad. And she did this several times in her brain, and it gave her this pattern. And then she needed to use the bathroom, and she went and used the bathroom, and she came back. And she said, "Oh, I don't know," she said, "but I feel infinitely better." There was a change in her face and everything, and she totally felt better. And she said, "I'm feeling really well inside. Something really has happened." Something really had happened. Anyway, so for years and years, she had spent years in therapy and stuff like this, and people were digging the problem hole deeper and deeper and deeper, and everybody was getting mad with being with her and everything, and because all she wanted to talk about was what was messed up and what was not working, what the problem was, and where she feels stuck and how she feels alone. And she spent years talking about this stuff. And when she came to me, the fellow who sent her said, "Well, David's not going to be talking much to you. He's a hypnotherapist. And there's not going to be much of this conversation at all. And he'll more or less let you know what it is that you're going to be talking about. And he's very much like that." So when she came, she wasn't expecting a conversation, and it didn't occur, because I realised that she'd spent years talking about the crap, right? And I just said to her, "Here's one thing that we're going to be doing whilst we're together." And I said, she would see me 3 times because I sensed that it was a good idea for me to see her at least 3 times. And I said, and during this time that you are here, we are going to be talking about what you want. And then I taught her the language of peace. And I really was a stickler with her. So as to make sure she was understanding the language of peace and using the language of peace when she was with me. So then we were talking about stuff she wanted, stuff she liked, mostly, until finally, this piece of change work occurred. But anyway, now she's written to me several times. She's written to us, and she's a loving life. She's told me she's totally cured, and she's written that to me. And all the physicians say she is totally cured. So the vestibular system is that aspect in our brain which sets up this equilibrium, these equilibrium reflexes. So there's a reflex in the brain at the vestibular level, which if I was falling forward, all of a sudden, as the ground comes up towards the face, it activates the parachute reflex, which is compensating the body from falling. And so it stiffens up the body in that aspect of where the body is feeling compromised. And so whenever there is anything that's inhibiting my ability to move forward in life, it sets up varying degrees of either plasticity or rigidity, depending on how the person copes with things in life. And it changes the electrostatic field as a result of, one day I treated this person and it truly was the most intense armour plating here, really an electrical current was flowing down here, and this person had the greatest immunological problems. And the reason why this person had immunological problems was because all of this life pattern had left an electrostatic field around the thymus gland, which changed the energy field in which the DNA and the nucleus of the cells ordinarily are requiring an energy field to be able to produce the right ribonucleic acid for reproduction of the cell and for cell function. So when the energy field changed, it compromised the cell's ability to produce and for its cell function, actually. And so this always occurs, whenever there's ailment. This is one aspect of the ailment, in fact, that's happened. That the electrical current has changed, electrostatic valence properties has changed, the energy field changes, and so then the pH, the right environment, is in need of being there for the cells to function properly. So anything, in fact, that's where the person's feeling compromised, like I worked with someone who was near death from AIDS, and I asked this person, can you see yourself in the future? I knew this person liked to drink coffee, so I just said to this person, can you see yourself in a month's time drinking a cup of coffee? And they said, they thought about it, and they said yes. And then I took them further and further into the future to Christmas. This was last Christmas, and this person was near death at the time, and this process of taking the person further into the future allowed this person to live all the way through to Christmas and after Christmas, actually. So whenever something is compromising the nervous system, there's a corresponding reflex, which is an attitudinal reflex. So in other words, to have an attitude, there's a corresponding reflex. An attitude which is involving a playfulness is really like quite a degree of flexibility in the tonus that I'm feeling in my body. An attitude that's involving no, I'm not going to. And there's kind of a rigidity, in the person's psyche. Of course, that corresponding attitudinal reflex in the body is that there would be a degree of rigidity occur in the body to have this attitude, because the body is the mind's experience of itself. When you're expanding yourself through extending the muscles and lengthening the muscles, of course this is developing a much expanded sense of self, and you are extending self because the body is the mind's experience of itself. So if I'm feeling flexible, my feeling of flexibility comes quite to some degree as a result of the flexibility in my hamstrings. How much the biceps femoris in my legs have the ability to extend, is my thought and my sense of ability to stretch and to lengthen and to be extended in life, actually. So the pressure receptors in the vertebrae are all, if I'm feeling high, which is a vestibular predicate, or feeling low, or feeling heavy, these words are indicating how much tonus is flowing through the vertebral column. So somebody who's feeling heavy, of course, the pressure receptors are quite activated. And when a person's feeling light, there's a lengthening that occurs, all the way up through the spine. That the body is the mind's experience of itself. This is why things like yoga, I think, and movement is very important.
David, I'm going to ask you, there's somebody that comes to the yoga class real regularly, and she's flexible. But in the last month, she's been having a lot of back aches and back pain. And so she'd stopped coming to class for a while, and she comes occasionally now. And I noticed that where she can do a lot of postures and her body moves, and yet there's a lack of tone in the mid-back, the mid-thoracic area. And her pain is like right below that. And even when she does a certain posture where it almost seems like it's necessary to use those muscles, she's not using, and there's like a real flaccid.
So whereabouts in the back are they? How far up the back?
It's about the
thoracic, or
10, maybe 8, 9, 10, 11,
okay.
12, 13, 14 thoracic.
Okay, so then I would say you have picked up that this woman is in need of heart energy.
Uh-huh.
There's something going on that's to do with love and life energy, very much. This chakra has there's a degree of plasticity in this chakra, and there's a need, in fact, for this oscillation between the aorta, the nodal, the sinoatrial nodal point in the heart, and the current that flows between the heart and the base of the spine sets up an oscillation, and that the heart chakra, beating, and the way that these grids meet with each other. Of course, the back is very much in relation to what's happening here. I would say that it's important that she learns that this is something that you've picked up, and that she has the ability to start to use those muscles and to free up whatever it is that's there, that she feels that this is being freed up. And if I saw someone in the class like this, I might not draw the person's attention to it consciously, but I might talk about, heart energy, and mark out something for that person.
Okay, there's another little piece here. I've also noticed that she's very sensitive to sound. It's like if I have music on and almost everybody else is comfortable with it, she's like, it's still too loud, it's too much. It's like she doesn't seem to be able to turn sound. Yeah,
yes.
She's real sensitive to
mostly when someone's feeling some degree of pain, they have a lower threshold for feeling pain. In other words, someone's feeling quite a bit of pain in their life, even an electric drill going through a metal door or something can be
so
upsetting the person.
That might be the relationship, is just that she's got low tolerance?
Yes, yes.
Is it the ability to adjust to?
Possibly, there's something in her life that's to do with receiving love, and how the heart energy around her, she's experiencing this in her family, and how she's experiencing this in life. I would say that's a major thing here.
How she's receiving.
Yes, how
the love could be out there.
Right.
Just like the persons that didn't think you would care.
Yes, right.
So that's something I can work with.
Yeah. Okay, so now in the vestibular paper we talked a little bit about motion sickness. So what do you know about when someone has this manifest? What happened to them? Notice that I put that in past tense, right? What happened to them? Okay.
Associated.
Pardon?
So we're dissociated?
Possibly, yes. They are something's occurring where there is some degree of dissociation occurring, yes. What majorly is happening, I gave the example of the bus in the paper. Alright, I'll go over it here.
You're going against the natural movement.
Okay, excellent. So when anybody's ever going against something, it'll create disequilibrium in the body. Okay? Simple. Whenever you are going against the flow of something, it's going to create disruption in the flow of electrical activity in the body. So when you're at one with the rain, it's more likely that you can meet the energy of the rain. Whereas if you were kind of against the rain, feeling, it's more likely it really would be affecting you. So what happens, like if we're travelling on a bus together and we're going in this direction, right, and we're all on the bus together, okay, and we're going to go round to the right and we're all facing the way that we're going, okay, if you can imagine this. Now, you are standing up in the bus, and the bus goes round to the right. Which way do you lean? The bus is going round to the right and you're standing up in the bus. Yes, right. Now, look down the front of the bus, and as you watch the bus turning round to the right, which way does the bus driver lean? Yes. Right. Who is more likely to get motion sickness in the bus driver or people standing in the bus?
People standing.
Right. And why is that?
I would go with it.
Somebody who is really sports inclined may naturally go with it, but most people are actually kind of keeping themselves in an upright, visually kind of keeping themselves upright.
Yeah, I've noticed too about people like that, especially if we're on a subway train that's really hauling through the tunnels and everything. The people that are going against the turn of the subway, we're going right this way, people lean the other way, they're holding on to something. Like they're attached to this external thing, and so they're just like going with it, being back and forth with it. Whereas like I find I like to kind of ride it, like if I can, I like to not.
Yes, because if the subway goes to take off, and it's going to take off to the right, most people, if they're not holding on to something, they've got to keep your centre of gravity, right? And so you actually, if the train is going to go forward that way, and we naturally, if you're going to go with it, you're going to move forward with the train. Somebody who's being jostled, passively resisting the force, then this is the thing, you see, anybody who passively resists will end up with a flow being interrupted.
So people that have this as a coping strategy,
yes,
nauseated,
yes,
that's possibly what they're doing.
Absolutely, always. There is no exception. Whenever you see a person sick, you can know that actually that's what's going on. There's passively resisting something.
Passively resisting.
Right, passively resisting. Okay? So now what do you do if you're in a bus? How do you go about creating wellness? You go actively participate in the ride. You actively participate.
Another one, and this is true also. I've experienced this where if I'm sitting, say, against the wall and the bus is going around this way, I've allowed the bus to press me up against the wall and just be sort of relaxed and really feel all the pressure of the
yes,
centrifugal force.
This is if you are actively, yes, but you may still yet be actively involved in that. However, it's more likely that there can be more impetus for motion sickness to occur in that situation than it would be if you were actively participating, actually by moving in, to the turn. Actually, because if you notice this, look, if I'm going to be if I'm going to be swinging round to the right, okay, the way that if I'm able to keep to satisfy semiconductive properties, I need to kind of get my head a little bit more over on that angle because centrifugal force is ordinarily spinning things out. And by moving in a little bit, I'm creating a centripetal force of something going in a little, and as a result, it's creating equilibrium in my ability to process information. So if somebody stands here and they just, really spin around, really fast, okay, and then this person stops, right, okay, then they see the environment running this way. This is this compensatory reflex that's been set up in the brainstem through the vestibular system. That's gone equally the amount of pace that you were going this way, it was going that way. So that now, if you could imagine this in a chamber, like there's water, and I've been spinning it this way, and the water is spinning that way. If there's something that I can do in the water to go in the opposite direction, right, it will create a greater degree of semiconductive property, so that then when I just touch something on the top of the surface of the water, it has the ability to completely be transmitted all the way down to the base without being continuously swept around. So that explains an aspect of this, in the way that we process information in our brain, and why it's important, the use of vestibular system to move something further away from somebody or to bring something in closer to the person. This is the use of the vestibular system to affect the tonus of the brain. Okay? So we talked a little bit about the use of this in timelines, didn't we? We talked like if somebody's picture of the future, let's say the past was up there, would be meaning that the person really has kind of come to an easier place, because the degree of tonus to get there has been that it was high there and it's coming down to this point.
Would you speak a little bit about what it means, the tonus of the brain?
The tonus of the brain, you can imagine the tonus of the brain to be like the wind that goes through a windsock, right? When there isn't any wind there's no structure in the windsock, but as soon as the wind comes along,
I understand the windsock, but I don't understand the tonus of the brain.
Okay, so the wind is like the tonus, which is tonus is an amount of electrical valence, amount of electricity that's passing, right? So in other words, if I really hold a 20-pound weight, there's a lot of tonus there to hold that weight. And if there was just only like a little bit of weight in my hand, there's only a smaller amount of tonus required. Tonus is the characteristic resilience that a muscle has to being stretched. In other words, like if I hold my hand out here and then
how is it that the brain has resistance, and how is it that the brain holds tonus?
Through the consciousness being tuned as a result of the use of the body. In other words, if the body's really kind of flabby, the brain also is. Mm-hmm. This is quite amazing what I'm telling you. Mm-hmm. This is very new. This is an understanding about how we drive the brain, actually. And this came from reading Laurier's work. I came across a statement that he made. It was very interesting to me, because he said it's very interesting that when this person's body is relatively flaccid, their mind also is quite flaccid. And then later on he went on to say that it was very interesting that it seemed that this deranged behaviour seemed to be brought in order when I started to use language with the person. What I knew was that this language was stimulating the left hemisphere, which was bringing the person more into the external world again.
What is an excellent tonus of the brain?
Having just those synapses that required to become a sort of exit for a definite central integration of something. In other words, in a golf swing, it would be important just that the tonus was there that was required to drive the ball where you wanted it to go. Any more or any less, there has to be just the right amount for whatever the task is. So in other words, in the tank, being able to completely go out of the body would mean that the tonus in the body actually is starting to dissipate quite incredibly, so that you're totally free then of the body. Then you can go anywhere with your mind then. So it really it depends on what we're doing actually. Right.
So Tanya asked you a question that says, how did you tone the brain? And what was your answer to that? And then you said, this is quite remarkable what I'm telling you. What did you say? Because it's like...
What's remarkable is that the way that we have access to what is occurring in the brain is by what it is that we do with our body.
Okay, yeah.
Would an example of this tonus of the brain be, say, you set a condition that I'm walking forward and another person ring the bell, I'll turn around and walk the other way. So I'm walking forward and I forget that I'm supposed to turn around and the bell rings. The bell rings, and I remember, turn around. And then, so now it's clear in my memory, and when I'm walking the other way, then I hear the bell ring, I instantly turn around.
Well, I'll say one thing about this. If I just said, Ken, you're going to walk out there, and the moment that you hear me ringing this bell, you're going to turn around and come back. Now, the way that you turned, I would have information on the tonus in your brain, because the nigrostriatal system, in other words, the connective tissue coming from the hemispheres going into the corpus callosum, which is the connective tissue in the middle of the brain, right? If the nigrostriatal is coming from the left hemisphere, running from the left hemisphere, into the brain this way, then you would turn round to the right. And if your right hemisphere was being involved in something, right, what I would see would be you would turn around to the left. So naturally, people generally unwind by turning to the left, and people wind up generally by turning to the right. So I would know just simply by the way you turned what degree of electrical activity, the configuration of the electrical activity, the way that you were using your brain, by this tonus affecting the way that you moved.
So if you turn to the left, you're using the right hemisphere more.
If you turn to the left, you're using the right, right. And also again, if you're watching someone write something and you notice that their hands are writing backhand, the tonus in the brain, actually there's a crossing over, there's a decussation in the electrical pattern of the brain which is creating this backhandedness in the writing. So what I know is that there's some degree of configuration of the right hemisphere being involved somewhat in the person's writing style, as well as the left, because there's this decussation occurring here, which is actually occurring in the brain. Okay? So you would be making sure that you were leaning into the turn and you were actively participating in the ride.
I had an experience yesterday when I was flying in. We came down through clouds and really rough weather, rough turbulence, and I was holding a cup of hot coffee, and I could start to feel the turbulence increase. And so I thought, well, I was lifted off of the tray table in front of me, and a piece of cake there. I thought I'd lift it up off the tray table so that I would be adjusting it to the lift and drop of the airplane.
Yeah.
Well, suddenly my arm shot up here. And,
yes.
And then I kept trying to judge it, and it came down and smacked into the cake. And
yes.
It was going like that. And I think, it's not spilling, I must be keeping some equilibrium.
Yes.
And then it kind of calmed down, and I felt inside and to see if my stomach had been jostled or even nausea and motion sickness, and I couldn't detect it.
Yes, exactly. Yes, because anybody who actively participates in this, they'll always be feeling an equilibrium. Anybody in the group who actively participates, who feels wherever they are in life is fine, and that you are actively participating no matter what you do, you'll always be fine in life. So a good idea to be accepting of something, to welcome it, even as a result of this, you see.
What is it about people who feel nauseated while they're reading in a moving automobile or something? What is that about? Because
they're passively resisting the force of the ride itself. They're not actively participating in the ride. Their mind's totally gone to the book, and they've let go actively participating in the ride. They're passively being jostled in the ride, and this sets up electrical patterning in the brain, which overloads the vagus nucleus in the brainstem.
They are resisting, because if you're trying to hold your eyes still, because then when you ride your eyes, you can also sometimes even feel like you're kind of getting this little jiggling.
However, someone who holds their eyes still and can read fine in a moving vehicle, this person is still actively participating.
They are?
Yes, in the ride. The car goes forward, and you notice the person's going forward, to counteract, or the car goes round to the right, and you notice the person's kind of moved over to the right a little bit,
So that person could do it and feel comfortable.
Oh, sure.
But some people just
Yeah.
Yes, a person who is
I'm reading. I'm just reading now. That's all I'm doing. But
passively
I'm reading
inhibiting.
in the car,
So,
with this person.
what about the person who, when they sit in the front seat, they don't have any nausea when they sit in the back seat?
Okay. Yes, because the person in the front seat has the ability to use their eyes to steady
Front seat
the nervous system a little bit.
With the reading.
But if you're in the car, you can greatly help this person's comfort by sharing this information with them about actively participating in the ride, rather than,
It could be more just a desire to be in the front seat.
Oh, there would be usually if someone feels better. You know.
I know, I have to ride shotgun.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
But anyway, settling the eyes on something. One day, my brother and I and my father were bringing a boat across from the mainland of Australia to Tasmania. It takes about a day and a half at sea. It was a big power boat. And anyway, so my brother took the wheel, and anyway, so we're just all looking at the back of the boat. You know, we're doing about 35 mile an hour, just really going across the surface of the ocean. And it's a little bit like bouncing like this, and slowly but surely we're seeing like our, you know, the wake of the boat slowly moving further and further around, and everybody just thought my brother must be just kind of lining up with something, right? And next thing you know, slowly but surely, like all of a sudden we can see the wake again, that we've practically gone in a full circle. And because my brother, he was looking at the compass, right? And of course he's trying to get the boat to be exactly, you know, just heading, you know, to so many degrees this way, right? Rather than looking at a cloud, picking out like, you know, 64 degrees on the compass where we're supposed to be heading, lining that up with a cloud or something that's on the horizon, and they're just kind of driving from that. You know, he had totally gone into the compass, more or less, right? So being able to line yourself up with something on the horizon can enable you to be able to move in a direction through the bush, or you know, through some situation actually, to give you a reference point that enables you to spatially understand key in things.
Everybody says it, and I used exactly the opposite thing one time on a ferry that was like a half a day crossing, and they said, look at the horizon. When I did, I really noticed the difference. So I looked at the wall across from me, which was with me, and to me that worked better. Why does everybody insist that looking at the horizon is better?
Okay, because the way that you looked at it was, the wall especially was with you, and whilst you were looking at the horizon, what you motioned to me was that the horizon was not with you. If the horizon was with you, then it was more likely that there's a with program running which creates ease. Whenever there's an against program, it creates disruption to the ease. You'll notice that people process information this way, actually. They need to create a degree of disruption in the way they think about something, because this is their way of processing information. Because this anxiety becomes state-specific to memory retrieval, actually. There's many, many people out there that process information this way. You know, people who polarize, who sort through polarizing.
Does that mean that most people who look at the horizon are polarizing?
No. Somebody who looks at the horizon and has the ability to sense that steadiness occur, you know, and their ability to participate in the ride, actually, you know, this will steady the nervous system.
And vision, I think, is key in motion wellness. I notice even if like I'm reading, I'm right into reading, and we're moving around a lot, you know. Just the top line of my periphery vision is kind of always checking and balancing. And even if I'm in like the back of a, you know, panel van or something that doesn't have any windows at all, I find that I'm flashing to scenery outside the car anyway. I know the terrain or something, or I can just see a tiny little bit through the front window. Kind of find myself like following the road.
Yes, excellent. So there's a degree of actively participating in the ride, even though you're reading. You know,
and that's why I can even walk down the streets of New York reading a book, because I'm always scanning the periphery, and I can just like keep walking there.
Is that on, Johnny?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a thing of being able to do a task and be aware of everything at the same time.
Yes. Okay. So there's
to do that task completely and satisfying.
Right. There's an organ in here behind the back of the nose called the ethmoid organ, and it's festooned with the body's own lodestone crystals, which are organically derived, which are sensitive to electromagnetic energy. It's this ethmoid organ which picks up micro pulsations that are coming through the earth that set the mitotic rate of cell division and that stimulate growth hormone to be released at 4 o'clock and stimulate the kidneys and the bladder to go through their heyday, between the hours of 3 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And there's these micro pulsations